understand how the body works electronically, you first have to understand its battery system and its wiring system. The human body is a portable electronic device, and all portable electronic devices need a battery, don't they? Mm. Well, it turns out that our muscles are rechargeable batteries, and they're also what's called piezoelectric. And that funny word means that if you take something and stress it and it emits electrons, that's called piezoelectricity. Mm-hmm. So when I do my arm like this, I'm stressing my muscles and they are generating electrons. But fortunately, my muscles are also rechargeable batteries, and so when I'm doing this, I'm recharging my muscle batteries. Now, our muscles are surrounded by a white fibrous substance called the fascia. All of us have seen that at Christmas and Thanksgiving time when we carve the turkey.
Yes.
All that shiny stuff around the muscles is called fascia. Now, fascia is a semiconductor. So what's a semiconductor? Semiconductor is simply an arrangement of molecules that allows electrons to move at the speed of light through them, but only in one direction. So our muscles are surrounded by this fascia, which is basically the body's wiring system. And so we can move electrons from the batteries, which are our muscles, where distant places we need them, to whatever organ we need them, at the speed of light. That's why if you put an essential oil on your big toe, it's in your brain that quick, because it sends the information through the fascia. Well, now we have to talk a little bit about acupuncture.
Yes, that's...
For a very long time, nobody's really known what an acupuncture meridian was, and there are all sorts of theories about what they are, but here's my take on that. Every organ in the body has its own battery pack. Let me say that once more. Every single organ in the body has its own battery pack. And that battery pack is a very specific stack of individual muscles. So our muscles are stacked together, hooked together, very much like you putting several batteries in a flashlight. And so, for example, if you want to think about the battery pack for my heart, it starts here in my little finger, goes up, it's these muscles, it goes up here, goes up there, goes around to my shoulder, goes into my heart. That's the battery pack for my heart, and that is called the heart acupuncture meridian. So an acupuncture meridian is simply a stack of muscle batteries.
If I can, this is just kind of an aside, but on point. 30 years ago, I was tracking down energy and medicine in Europe. And I did a story with a man named Jean-Claude Duras, Dr. Jean-Claude Duras, who at that time was a hero in Asia. Because what he had done is they had all these acupuncture meridian charts that they had used historically, but there was no proof. You couldn't open it up and look at it as you could our circulatory system. And what he did was he proved the existence of this by shooting radioactive isotopes into one of the meridians and watching the migration patterns, the speed where they went, and it all bore out that this meridian system you're talking about is a physical reality.
Yes.
I just bring that up to say it has been done in the Western medical model.
Yep. So what happens then is, when we want to consider an illness, we must consider its power supply. So you tell me you have angina, then I know that you have low voltage in the battery pack that supplies voltage to your heart. And so all I have to do then is go figure out, why is the voltage low in that battery pack? Or another way of saying it, why can't the battery pack for your heart maintain a charge? Maintain a voltage, its charge. Because if it could, then almost certainly you would repair your heart, you'd make new cells at work, and your heart would work fine. So then what one has to do then is go through a sort of a checklist and say, okay, what are the things that are affecting that particular circuit? Now, one of the things you also have to begin to realize is that all of the acupuncture circuits began in either a hand or a foot. And
those are like the terminus points.
Basically where, where
and
it
the ears
starts.
too, right?
That's the first battery in the pack.
First battery in the pack, okay.
And so It runs up a leg, but it goes all the way to the top, to the brain. Or it starts in the fingers and it comes up all the way to the brain on its way wherever it goes. And on its way through the skull, it goes through very specific teeth. So, for example, one of the more important circuit, oh, by the way, you have a circuit that goes up and one that goes back down. So the spleen circuit starts in your big toe, goes all the way up to the frontal lobes of the brain, hooks onto what's called the stomach circuit, and goes all the way back down to the foot. Now the spleen-stomach circuit is one of the more important circuits in the body, in my view, because it's the battery pack for the entire reproductive system, for all of the endocrine system, and for the frontal lobes of the brain.
That's important.
Including the maculas of your eye. So, for example, when the spleen circuit comes up and gets to the frontal lobes of your brain and switches over to the stomach circuit, it's the power supply to the macula. So if you have a patient with macular degeneration, guess what? It always has low voltage, the stomach circuit.
Okay, let me just ask you at this point, are you indicating then that acupuncture would be one of the primary paths then?
Well, look, acupuncture historically was sticking a needle into a spot and noticing that it changed the health of that person. But my view on that is that a needle acts like an antenna and takes some electrons out of the air and goes through that. It helps recharge that battery pack. Now, certainly when I was in China in 1978, a very long time ago, what they would do is put them in and they would still clip onto them with electric power sources because it's more efficient. We've found, of course, you don't need needles. You can very easily, if you have the appropriate waveform and the appropriate frequency, you can easily recharge the battery packs with electrode devices like my biomodulator puts on there and
created one for that purpose.
And so you have to be careful when you're talking about acupuncture. Are you saying that the most efficient way to treat macular degeneration, for example, is with needles? No. The most efficient way is figure out why the stomach has low voltage, but while you're figuring it out and fixing it, plug into the terminals, because all of our battery packs in our body have specific areas that are terminals, like the terminals on your car battery, where you would go clamp in to recharge it. We have specific ones.
So it's a starting place.
Yeah. So you recharge the battery pack, and then while you're doing it, you're answering the question, why was it that this battery pack could not hold its charge? Well, a common one is hypothyroidism, because thyroid hormone T3 controls the voltage of every cell membrane.
And isn't that an epidemic now?
Yes, and T2 controls the voltage of the mitochondria.
Okay.
So you have to look at T3 in particular, and unfortunately most blood tests for thyroid do not look there. They look at either T4 or even worse at TSH. TSH is the least reliable of the thyroid tests, even though it's the one that is standard of care.
Right.
So you have to look at hypothyroidism. Next thing you have to look at is scars. So because the fascia is a wiring system, if you put a scar across and it goes down and touches the fascia, it creates a short or a ground. And so it drains off some of the voltage, just like leaving the dome light on in your car. And what you'll see is that commonly a scar is not sufficient to cause an organ to fail, but it is sufficient to turn off the pump inside of a tooth that keeps the tooth from getting decay. And so what happens is that a kid falls off their bike and they get a scar across their knee, which is, by the way, the spleen and stomach circuit. And within the year, they have a decay in the molar on that side, upper molar or lower premolar, because those are the teeth in that circuit. Every tooth has a pump inside it that pumps fluid into the mouth so that bacteria can't get into the tooth. Well, if you shut that pump down, now you get decay. Decay is more due to pump failure than it is due to eating too many sweets. That was proven at the dental school in Loma Linda. So what happens is that you fall off your bike, you get a scar, a year later you got a filling, a few years after that you get a bigger filling, a few years after that you get a bigger filling, a few years after that you get a crown. And soon after you get the crown, you get decay under the crown, which the dentist can't see because the
And you
x-rays
have a
won't
root
go
canal.
through it. Then you have a root canal. One root canal shuts down 63% of your immune system. And I just got through reviewing the last 50 cases of cancer that I've seen in my office. 95% of them had a dental infection, usually a root canal, in the same acupuncture circuit as their primary cancer.